Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today we are sitting down with Nag Murty. He's the founder and CEO of Electric Sheep Robotics, and he's here to talk all about plans to bring in the landscaping industry into the new era using autonomous robots. Nag, it sounds awesome. I appreciate you being here. Your flagship product is an autonomous lawnmower called Ram. I got to be honest, Nag, I can't really quite imagine how that works. How does it work?
Well, it's so the way you should think about this is it's an AI-driven mower that basically makes sense of the physical world around it. We've trained a large world model that tells it all about the world, like what's grass, what are trees, what's the road, and then it wakes up when you put it on a lawn, and then it figures out that it needs to mow the lawn, and it goes and mows the lawn. So that's what it does in its simplest form.
So it mows the lawn by itself.
That's right. Yep.
Okay, cool. And now if you're the user, if you're the person who's using this in his or her backyard, are you kind of feeding it any of that unique information about the kind of dynamics and the dimensions of the yard itself? How does that part work, the education component?
Yeah, so we don't do any mapping or training, which is very traditional in robotics. So the way we're doing this is very similar to how Tesla does full self-driving. It's mapless. It's built up like a world model representation, which is a common sense understanding of the world around it. And then it just knows to do what's expected of it, which is to mow the lawn. The other thing I'll mention is that we're not selling this to consumers. We operate these as part of our own landscaping services fleet. So that's the key difference between this robot and a commercial sort of lawnmower.
Okay, fair enough. So you run on an AI model called ES1, if I'm not mistaken. How does that differ from, let's say, more traditional AI models that our listeners might be familiar with, like a Gemini or a ChatGPT or a Bard or something like that?
Yeah, so you should think about ChatGPT as an AI model that groks or understands language. So it's got a sense for, the grammar, the nuances of language. ES1, on the other hand, is what's called physical intelligence. So it's that nonverbal intelligence that you and I have when we navigate the world, right? How not to bump into things, how to go from one point to another efficiently. And so that's what sets ES1 apart from the LLMs out there. Another fun way to think about it is think of it as a cat GPT. What's the intelligence that a cat has, right? As it navigates the world. So it's animal-like intelligence as opposed to verbal intelligence.
Is there a data gathering component to the company? And if so, what does that look like? I feel like that's a big part of the conversation as we've seen, companies, even companies like Reddit go public. It's what they're doing with their user data to inform future language models. There's a really interesting blend that I feel like we're only now talking more and more about. So what does that conversation look like for Electric Sheep?
Absolutely. And this is a question that is relevant for all of robotics at the end of the day, because historically, robotics has been data starved, right? The way, if you think about how LLMs came about, there was all this content on the internet and books that the LLMs were sort of trained on, right? And they developed this pre-trained model. For robotics, that really does not exist today. And so what robotics companies need to do is to build their own proprietary data sets to train this physical intelligence, which is what we're doing. And the way we're going about it is, instead of selling a robot to customers, we're just going out and acquiring a whole bunch of landscaping companies using a very traditional sort of private equity roll-up strategy, and then using that to build a data flywheel that can then feed these models, these very data-hungry models, all the data that they need to develop this physical intelligence.
Is there a component where, like a lot of large language models, ES1 continues to learn, continues to get better, continues to inform itself? What does that process of discovery look like?
Absolutely. So the keyword here is interaction data. It's not passive data observation. So, you can't just watch a bunch of YouTube videos of people with GoPros like mowing the lawn and, you can build a sense for what to do. Instead, what you want to do is let loose a bunch of robots in the field with, and allow them to make mistakes and learn. And as they make more mistakes, they sort of update their model. And in the process of, starting with mowing, we're actually collecting data that can inform a whole bunch of other activities like weed treatment or trimming the lawn, or even things like pressure washing and so on and so forth. So it's just like a massive data play at its core.
So AI models to this point tend to require a lot of data in order to learn and kind of teach itself over time. But a lot of estimates say that the race for quality data could be depleted really just within the next few years. Do you see data supply shortages as being a challenge or a risk to your company or even to the industry?
Not at all. So, when you think about language, right? Sure, there's a paucity of data now that we've crunched through all the available, Reddit forums or whatever else you have out there. But when you think about physical intelligence, right, we're just getting started. Think of all the data that the Teslas are collecting, these machines are collecting, like mowers and snow blowers and all that. There's no dearth to how much data you can collect across the surface of the earth in reality. So I'd say we're just at the cusp of vast treasure trove of data that needs to be unlocked. And there's another aspect to this which is kicking into high gear now, which is synthetic data, both for language models as well as for physical models, where you generate or simulate both language as well as sort of artificial physical worlds for these robots to learn. So I would say we're not hitting a data wall. We're just at the cusp of beginning to take off, really.
I mean, aside from the incredible moment that AI is having and the boost to the market and so on and so forth, and it is impressive, the landscaping industry itself brought in more than $153 billion in revenue last year, according to one estimate. Well, why did you decide that AI robots was the thing that was missing and also needed for the landscaping space?
That's such a great question, right? This is a huge industry hiding in plain sight. So if you historically think about where the AI investment dollars have gone, they've gone into autonomous driving, which is arguably a much harder problem to solve than things like outdoor robotics, right? So the technical complexity of the problem space is a lot lower. That's one reason, besides it's being a huge market. And I think the third, which is probably the most important reason, is that there's a huge labor shortage when it comes to our market, right? So there's no takers for outdoor work today. Most people either want to work indoors or want to do knowledge work. So there's not enough people willing to sort of sweat it out in the hot outdoor sun, right? And push around physical machines. And so landscapers today are struggling because they can't find enough people. So the industry is actually struggling to grow despite there being a huge amount of demand. So if you made labor available for $1 an hour, imagine what would happen to this industry. It would literally explode overnight. So that's why we picked this industry.
Can you talk to me more about your clients, your customers that you're serving? You mentioned not necessarily for individuals or households, but I wonder, are you working with landscaping firms, kind of bigger operations that are kind of interested in bringing you in more of a wholesale way? And if so, what does that business model actually look like?
So our go-to-market is rather unique compared to other robotics companies. Like I said, we go acquire existing landscaping companies, ranging from small 1 million EBITDA companies all the way to 10 million EBITDA companies. So in some sense, our customers are their customers, and they include everyone who's a traditional corporate customer, a large HOA, or a large corporate entity like an Amazon warehouse or a FedEx, or even a large municipality, like a whole city, which will subcontract or contract out the maintenance of its parks and so on and so forth. So that's the sort of customers we deal with, but we deal with them in the process of acquiring these companies. That's I would say, that's our customer base.
How do you plan on scaling out the robots? And can you talk to me a bit about manufacturing as well? What does that look like, the actual hardware component?
Yeah, so our approach, which maybe goes back to the question you asked earlier, which was, in outdoor work, if you look at it, right, is actually fully comprised of mechanized work, which is you already drive machines to do the work today, whether it's a snow removal machine or a lawnmower or what have you. So the way we build robots is we simply retrofit these machines with a computer and a couple of sensors. So we're not we don't have a full stack manufacturing problem, like other robotics companies. All we're doing is adding a computer and a bunch of sensors on existing machines, and we just make them run on their own. So it's a much more easier problem for us to scale manufacturing that way.
As I understand it, it's not the only robot that you have or are working on.
Yeah.
You have one that trims lawns, blows leaves, does a whole bunch of other stuff. What are the plans for that, and how is that one different?
That one's very different because there's two kinds of work in outdoor maintenance. One is surface coverage, which is things like snow removal, mowing, and so on. And the other is what we call coarse manipulation, which is, you pick up a power tool and you trim a bush, or, you trim the edges of your lawn, or you blow away leaves, or, spray weed killer. And that new agent that we've developed is actually running the same ES1 model, which is kind of cool. That runs both the mower and that other agent. We call it Verdi. And it's this cute little animal, Pixar-inspired robot, and which, people love to see. and it's very non-threatening. It's sort of intended to be like a swarm. So we see the future as like really helpful robot caretakers that are all over the world, helping us make it safer and greener and more fun to live in.
I mean, I think you can use to compare to a Disney Pixar character is going to win over people, I'm sure. Any other robot models in the works or things that you're working on that you can reveal?
So Verdi is like, is sort of in its like childlike phase right now, and we can start to scale up Verdi as it takes on like more and more heavier work. So think of it as we have like a surface coverage machine today, and we have Verdi, and then you'll see Verdi start to grow up and grow into bigger form factors as we scale.
And do you have an end goal for a world including autonomous robots in the world that you are working in?
Yeah, I think, robots are here to unleash radical abundance for all of us over here, right? And so our vision for the future is, we envision sort of growing Electric Sheep to be one of the largest outdoor services company in the world, which is deploying tens of thousands of robots internally for our own use. And really, we see ourselves as like robot-enabled caretakers for our planet across all of the gamut of services that are needed to sort of keep our built and natural spaces in good shape. And so that's kind of like the future we envision. And we really see robots working alongside people and not so much displacing labor, because like I said before, there's not enough people to do the work. And so you can use the existing, labor pool, and you can augment them and upskill them and, really sort of help them sort of develop new skills while robots take on some of the more tedious aspects of outdoor work. So we're really excited about that future.
Yeah, and it seems like an exciting space and a time to be there. And it's a fascinating conversation because I think we help bridge the gap between a technology we're talking a lot about right now among investors in the major markets and some cool applications and ways that maybe our listeners didn't otherwise know. So thank you for taking the time. That's Nag Murty. He's the founder and CEO of Electric Sheep Robotics. Nag, thanks and congratulations.
Thanks for having me on.